Welcome, everybody. Super honored to be here with Blake today, one of the icons of Utah and of technology. You guys are going to be shocked at some of these stories. Like, honestly, foundation, not of Utah technology, but of technology. It's crazy. Like, we're going to get into some stories where Blake was instrumental in the creation of the venture community, in the invention, the advent of investment, and the companies that were involved in basically the foundation of the early generations of technology. He's a cool guy. It's going to be a fun conversation. And honestly, Slopes is super, super honored to have him inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, he levels all of us up by a pretty major scale. So give him a hand. Thank him for being here.
You know, I just love hanging out with Dave. I've known Dave a very long time, so I'm just cooler because I hang out with him.
Look, let's just someone write that down. I'm gonna put it in my journal. It's not true, but let's write it down. So let's get into it. So just the format today. I think we have an hour. Is that true? I don't know who I'm looking for. I got a thumbs up and back. So we're gonna save some time in the end to ask him questions. So I get about probably 40-ish minutes, 45 minutes. It depends on if it goes good. If it goes good, I'm gonna take it all, sorry. Now if I don't take it all, it's like, this didn't go good. Scratch that. But we'll give you guys a chance to ask questions, so be thinking about questions. And I think you'll be shocked at some of the context that you'll have access to. So when I say you'll have access to someone who was instrumental in both the creation of the technology ecosystem here in Utah, but in the technology evolution in the world. So it's going to be a pretty cool conversation. So let's get into it. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. This is a lot of fun.
This is good. Okay, so first, where are you from? So one of the things there's this concept when you have someone like Blake where it's like, oh my gosh, he's so distant from what I am. But I think most people, you know, the adage, like they put their pants on the same way as you do. And so, like, where are you from? What's your background?
Yeah,
like,
let me start. Got any farmers in here? Nobody? All right, I grew up on a farm in southeastern Idaho. And I would tell my kids that I graduated in the top 10 of my class. Now, my wife ratted me out when she told my kids that there were only 21 kids in my graduating class. So I grew up in southeastern Idaho, farming community. For those of you who are Yellowstone fans, my dad is a farmer, and the character John Dutton probably was characterized after my dad. So that's how I grew up. It was amazing on so many levels. I went to school at Ricks College, so that's how old I am. It's BYU, Idaho. Got some Ricks College guys in here. All right. And my freshman year, I was a wildlife management major. Thought I wanted to be a game warden. Like, how cool is it to wear those green polyester suits, drive around in a pickup truck? That's what I wanted to do. So my journey to where I am now, foundationally, I think I learned the nuances of hard work growing up on a farm, because we didn't have a choice. We just had to work hard on the farm. That's the way my dad raised us. And then I ended up living in New York City for a couple of years. And, you know, what I'll just say, the exposure to Wall Street, I was so fascinated. Keep in mind, my first apartment building that I lived in New York City, there were more people in that apartment building than the entire county that I grew up in. So New York was a huge culture shock for me. But it impacted me in a way where, you know what, I don't want to be a game warden any longer. I want to like figure out this whole business thing, and that was the journey that I went down. So yeah, I'm a farm boy from Idaho.
So okay, fascinating, right? So at some point you're like, okay, I'm now going to go study not wildlife management. I want to go into business. So what's that next step? How did you like go from I'm from southern Idaho and I love the outdoors to, okay, now I'm going to go study. What was your degree in? What did you study?
Yeah, so my degree is in economics. I thought I was going to get a finance degree. I'm at BYU, and I take all the prerequisites to get a finance degree from BYU. My dad has open heart surgery. During that time, I have a brother in graduate school. I have another brother living in South Africa. So somebody has to move home and run the farm. So I quit school, move home, run the farm, come back, and I try to start applying for classes in the finance program. Lo and behold, discovered that you have to actually apply to the finance program at BYU. So I had a good friend say, hey, come and take some econ classes with me. So I did that. Had the professors in the econ program tell me, hey, you know what? The finance students are just those students who flunked out of the econ program at BYU. So I stayed, got an economics degree. But during that time, I got married. And my then fiance was working at a company called WordPerfect, which we can go down that rabbit hole all day long. And so my very first job while I was going to BYU was I was a security guard at WordPerfect.
What year was this?
This would have been 1989.
So this is what version of WordPerfect were people using in 89?
So it was WordPerfect 4.2 on the DOS operating systems. Windows did not exist as we know it is today. And that Macintosh thing, that was just like a little toy that some of the schools would use. So WordPerfect, by the way, was an amazing company, probably controlled, I don't know, the vast majority of the word processing market.
All of it. And I mean, and it was taking the word, like first DOS was like, everyone was like, this is crazy. What you can do with DOS is insane. And then WordPerfect was kind of changed the world, right?
Oh, WordPerfect had this thing called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. And like it changed the world. I was a sales guy for WordPerfect. So security guard, because I was married and needed a little part-time job while I was finishing school. Then I was able to convince them to hire me into their sales organization, move back to New York City, which is where I'd lived, kind of changed my life. But I remember going to trade shows feeling sorry for the Microsoft sales reps because no one wanted to talk to them. We just, like, our booths were so packed. It was just amazing.
You owned it. You owned it at the time.
Yeah.
So before we go down that path, one thing I want to highlight is there's this assumption that people who are successful have a lot of luck. And I'm sure there's luck in it, but you kind of rolled over this, hey, my dad had open heart surgery. I had to go home and run the farm. I missed the window for my finance degree. You're like, a lot of people don't realize like life just kicks the heck out of you. Like it's not an easy thing. So you kind of rolled over it with a smile, but I mean, that was, I'm assuming, a very tumultuous period in your life.
Well, it was crazy. I don't know if anybody's ever gone in and seen somebody right after they come out of open heart surgery. It was literally the scariest thing I'd ever seen. To see my dad, who's bigger than life, like this icon for all of us, laying in this bed on a ventilator and trying to figure out what are we going to do. And we have 5,000 acres. That was the size of the farm that my parents had. 300 head of beef cows. I have two brothers. Both of them were not available. Like, what are we going to do? I'm looking at my mom. It was a pretty major time in my life, and so like it was a super easy decision for me to quit school and move home. I had so many people tell me I was crazy to go do that, but it was an easy decision for me. And then the journey, honestly, getting an econ degree ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me from that standpoint. And one of the things, and I tell this to entrepreneurs, I don't like the word pivot. I like the word innovate. If you're not innovating yourself constantly, and that's kind of what I feel like I was, the early lessons was wildlife management, innovate, and somehow I ended up with an econ degree. Then I went to work at WordPerfect. And by the way, WordPerfect was this amazing company, privately held, so they kind of did whatever they wanted to. And it was just like we're on top of the world. But yeah, it was a wild journey during that time.
So again, just kind of some takeaways. There's an assumption that success comes fairly easily, and it does not, obviously, right? So okay, you're at WordPerfect, and what happens?
So I'm at WordPerfect, and by the way, I started in the sales organization and lived in New York City, lived in Seattle, I thought I wanted to be a marketing guy. By the way, I suck at marketing because it's not interesting to me. And that was the big realization and kind of big epiphany for me is like, you're not a marketing person because you're not very good at it. Why I wasn't very good at it is I just didn't like it. And so through a series of those sorts of learning experiences where I was in the sales organization, had an opportunity to move into product marketing, product management, then I moved into corporate development and had a responsibility there. And it was right about this window where Novell was acquiring WordPerfect. So this had been, call it 1993. And I had a good friend who was running corporate development. I moved into corporate development, ended up doing like kind of a bunch of business development. Like, what does WordPerfect / Novell's partnerships look like with companies like SAP and PeopleSoft, the big ERP vendors, those sorts of things. Well, during that journey, we had this guy named Eric Schmidt who came to Novell to be our CEO in 1996.
Have you heard of Eric Schmidt? Okay, I just wanted to make sure we had the right crowd here. Okay. Good.
You know what? Literally the smartest dude on the planet. Super eccentric, but like he came from Sun Microsystems, and during that time, I was working in corporate development, and I was given an assignment that said, we have this thing called the linguistics division, which was like a bunch of stuff left over from Novell, or from WordPerfect. It was costing us about $5 million a month in burn, not generating any revenue, and Eric's like, get rid of it. So I was tasked with selling that division. And through that journey, I got to know Eric really well. Really interesting guy, like him a lot. And he said to me, he goes, look, I was kind of the brains behind something called the Java Fund. The Java Fund was a $100 million fund that was managed by Kleiner Perkins. And Eric's like, I didn't like giving up control of the Java Fund to Kleiner, so we're gonna have our own venture fund internally. I said, great. I had no idea what that was. He goes, I got $300 million approved by Novell's board of directors, but I need somebody to run the day-to-day operations, and I'm your investment committee. Do you want to do it? Got to be real honest with you, I had no idea what a venture capitalist was. I remember, first of all, I said yes. Then I drove to, this predates Amazon, I drove to Barnes & Noble on University, and I bought the only 2 books on venture capital I could buy, and I started reading them. And then I had somebody ask me, dude, name the top 10 best venture capital firms in the world. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't name 10 in general, let alone the top 10. That's how I got into the venture business.
So, okay, now you're dropping some like names of like Eric Schmidt and Kleiner Perkins and a $300 million fund. What year was this roughly?
This would have been 1996, 97, right in there.
So like right in the advent of the internet, like it's starting to take some momentum here.
It's starting to take shape. In fact, I remember, and there's somebody sitting in the back of the room that probably remembers something similar to this story, Shirley, so there's this guy named Mark Andreessen. And Mark Andreessen shows up at Novell because Novell is developing a browser. And Mark's going to come and convince Novell, hey, you know what? Stop developing that browser. I have this little thing called Netscape. Why don't you just license this from us, and we're off to the races. You know, this is all kind of during that window in time where, you know, there was search engines. By the way, Google didn't exist either. The search engine, as you actually had to go up, HTTP, : : you had to type all that crap in at the time, just kind of going, what is this whole internet thing? And this browser thing from Netscape was going to like revolutionize what was happening here. So that's the world that I kind of grew up in. My kids laugh at me when I tell them, you know, cell phones and the internet did not exist when I got into the technology industry.
I mean, they didn't at all.
No.
The browser didn't exist.
No.
The internet didn't exist.
Nope.
So you get this, you're like coronated with a $300 million fund. And this is like in the context of like, there are people who invented the internet, invented the venture community.
Yeah.
And
so
tell me about these people.
Yeah. So I had so Eric Schmidt is an icon in Silicon Valley. And, you know, he was the chief technology officer at Sun Microsystems. a lot of the partners from Kleiner Perkins actually worked for Eric at Sun Microsystems. A lot of senior partners at Excel Partners were Eric's neighbors. Doug Leone from Sequoia was one of Eric's good friends. So what we had was $300 million. You can take $100 million and you can invest into companies. Little side note on investing into companies, I was given a chance to invest alongside Benchmark and Greylock into this little tiny startup called Red Hat. We put $1 million into that company. 18 months later, we took out $100 million. And I'm thinking, this venture business is easy.
Yeah, this is great.
Like, what are we doing here?
Why are we doing anything else? Let's quit making software.
Exactly. Well, yeah, because I get a phone call from Treasury at Novell going, what are you doing? Because the other income line on Novell's public statements was higher than some of the other stuff they were doing, and it looked bad. So I was kind of in trouble.
You were generating more income than the software business.
Yeah, so like they called to yell at me, so I had to run down to Eric's office and go, dude, you got to protect me. What's going on here? But during that time, because of Eric, I had the really good fortune of, on a pretty regular basis, like once a week, working out of Excel's, Sequoia's, Kleiner's, Benchmark's, Greylock's offices. Like, that's who I got to hang out with. So when I talk about who raised me in the venture business, it's the founders of those firms. Like a guy named Jim Schwartz, who's the founder of Excel Partners. You know, and by the way, Excel, they were the money behind Facebook and a bunch of these iconic companies out there. Like, I got to follow those guys around because they were friends with Eric. So by association, that's how I learned the venture business.
And let me give context. The venture industry was really emerged in the 70s and the 80s because businesses like Novell or Sun Microsystems had excess cash. There weren't venture firms per se, right? They were these like in-house investment things. And then guys like Doug Leone and these, they're like, oh, let's turn this into a thing. They invented venture, right? These guys were, they came up with this.
I mean, like Sequoia, you can go back and look, but Sequoia, Excel, those guys, their first funds were like less than $10 million. And, you know, Microsoft was backed by the venture industry. Oracle was backed. Like a lot of these iconic companies that we have were all put together by this group of, you know, Sequoias and Benchmarks and Excels of the world.
So you then, interestingly, Eric and you basically bring venture into Utah because it didn't exist.
So, venture, there are a couple of little tiny, like sub $5-10 million funds that were kind of kicking around, doing a bunch of stuff in biotech. But Eric was kind of the vision behind it. And so we put this fund together, and off to the races we go. And I remember thinking, gosh, like, how do I not screw up? And Eric gave me some guide rails, which honestly, I look back and were such wisdom. I could not make an investment unless I was co-investing with Sequoia, Excel, Benchmark, Greylock, like all of those big names. So I got to sit at the table with those guys. That's how I learned the business. So like the Red Hat investment, you know, it's sitting there with Greylock and Benchmark, two of the greatest firms in our industry today. And, you know, we're off to the races. Back then, Silicon Slopes did not exist. The Utah tech community did not exist.
It was non-existent.
It was really non-existent at all. Like Josh and John Pastana were kind of kicking around with this little crappy company called mycomputer.com, which, you know, fast forward 15 years became Omniture. But
then Adobe.
Then Adobe.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what this looked like. And so, I give a ton of credit to Eric.
But he's not here. You're here. So, but in reality, you've stayed and you built the community. So there really were no tech communities. You had Novell and WordPerfect, and you know BYU and the University of Utah, spinning out little. You know, the U did some interesting visualization stuff, but there was no community to actually turn these into companies. Okay, so then what's the next step?
Yeah. So in 2001, so I ran Novell's corporate venture fund from 96 to 2002. And we deployed $100 million into companies and $200 million into Kleiner Perkins, Excel. We helped Lightspeed spin out of Weisbeck and Greer. NEA. We were the first investors in Excel Europe, like that as an LP. And in 2001, I remember I get this phone call. I'm sitting in my office in San Jose, and I get this phone call from Eric's assistant, Pam Shore. Pam said, "Hey, Eric wants to talk to you." Well, when Eric would do that, there were usually a couple things that were going to happen. One is he and I were going on a field trip together. We were going to go see some companies or a venture fund. Or two, he had just committed to making an investment into a company, and I had to go figure it out. Like one of those two things were going to happen. So she said, "Eric needs to talk to you." So I walked down to his office, and I go into his office, and I sit down, and he goes, "Look, Novell's a public company, but you need to know this. I'm leaving Novell. I'm going to go be CEO of this little tiny startup called Google." Now, I don't know if you remember what Google looked like in 2000 and 2001, but it was a really crappy search engine company. Like, it was on the verge of going bankrupt. And Eric committed to go be CEO, but the only way you would do it is if Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia, the two investors in Google, had to put $25 million into that company. And then he said to me, "Do you want to go with me?" So, look, we all make mistakes in our career. Trust me, if I'd have gone to Google back then, I wouldn't have been in the venture business.
Here. Yeah, may not be sitting here.
I'd be living in California, which was not a great thing. So I was given a choice. I could stay at Novell and like run one of their divisions, or I could go do something different. So I called Jim Schwartz, the founder of Excel, on the phone, and I drive to Park City, and I sit down with him for breakfast, and I said, "What should we do?" And he started giving me some advice. I call the founders of Battery Ventures on the phone, great firm out of Boston. And I said, I want to stay in the venture business. What should I do? And so we start going through this whole conversation. And I'm through this, these guys help me out. So I'm talking to a firm in Silicon Valley. I'm talking to a firm in Boston. I'm talking to a firm in New York. And then Jim Schwartz is advising this little tiny firm in the state of Utah called Utah Ventures. I don't know if you remember those guys.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
A long time ago. A guy named Jim Dreyfus. And
Jim.
Utah Ventures, they were started in '86, little tiny fund. They had about $70 million in assets under management. And they were really regionally focused. And Jim Dreyfus wanted to make some changes. But Jim Schwartz, who was a big investor in that fund, said, "Go talk to Dreyfus." So I go sit down with Dreyfus. And my takeaway is like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So roll forward. One night, I'm sitting in my bedroom having a conversation with my wife. Across the hall is my oldest daughter's bedroom. And I was expecting a job offer to come in from a firm called Apex Partners. Well, it was Patrikoff, but it's now called Apex Partners, to run their East Coast venture practice. I'm moving to New York. It's going to be amazing. Like, we are locked and loaded. By the way, their venture fund was like $1 billion, so I was going to get like $500 million. We're off to the races. And so I'm telling this to my wife. We're having this great conversation, and I get up to go say goodnight to my kids. And I walk into, her name's McCall. She's 33 now. I walk into her bedroom. She's crying. And I'm like, instant kicks in. She's 10. Who's being mean to her, like what happened at school. And all she said to me was, "Dad, I don't want to move." I'm like, crap, what do I do? Like, I'm getting a job offer tomorrow. And I walked back in, I looked at my wife, and I said, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do now. So Dreyfus and I, he was actually had kidney stones, so I drive up to Salt Lake. He's laying in the hospital, and he and I actually figure out that me joining him at this time, we cemented that with, does anybody know Lone Star? A really crappy Mexican place up in Salt Lake. Well, first of all, the food is amazing. So Jim and I...
Be careful.
Yeah. Jim and I go to Lone Star. If you haven't gone to Lone Star, you should all go. But we go in, we sit down, we order lunch, and it's a cash-only place. Neither one of us have cash. Like, I'm managing a $300 million fund. Jim has $70 million. And between the two of us, we can't come up with $10 to buy lunch. So anyway, fast forward, we get lunch.
Little embarrassing.
Little embarrassing. We get lunch paid for.
But you just ran out. You skipped lunch.
Yeah.
Like, see ya.
Yeah. I had to go out to my car and dig $5 out of change out of my ashtray. But without my daughter saying, I don't want to move, I never would have stayed in Utah. We'd have moved.
And I'm going to pause you. Had you not stayed in Utah, I would argue we're not sitting here today. This slopes doesn't exist. The community doesn't exist. So let's give your daughter a little credit.
Well, you're very kind. This community in the state of Utah has changed my life, has impacted my family. Like what this community has done for me personally, it's hard for me to describe, and I might even get emotional when I think about the entrepreneurs, the people here in Utah. I'm a farm boy from Idaho that never should be sitting here, but yet the community gave me a chance. My daughter, now I will tell you, after a week of working at what was then called Utah Ventures, I whip out my Motorola flip phone on my drive home from the office, and I call my wife on the phone. I'm like, we're screwed. This thing is not going well. Because what was happening was, at the time, our firm was kind of imploding a bit. I mean, you might remember, but it was pretty crazy. And, we had the good fortune of raising $120 million for our third fund. That was when I joined. And of that $120 million, we took 60 of it and we invested into medical device and biotech, and we took 60 and we invested into software companies. But kind of leading up to that, like, one, we were in Utah. No investors wanted to invest into Utah. Like, we had to beg people. Like, they didn't even know what Utah was. So we had this journey, and I was like, we are done. Like, we're cooked.
And let me give context, too. So if you invest in a Utah company, and you can't get, like, let's say you help them get to a certain stage, and you can't get somebody else outside of Utah to come and kind of invest in that next round, you're cooked. Because you can't, a single fund can't fund a company all the way through to their, an exit. So if you don't have that partnership, you're done.
Yeah, coming back to my Novell days, I had deep relationships. In fact, I used to sit on the advisor boards of all these firms. And I'd call, I was buying passes at Deer Valley, hotel rooms at the Stein Eriksen, just to get them to come and look at companies. And it was so freaking hard. So of the $60 million we invested into biotech and med devices, we returned 30. So 50 cents on the dollar. I'm sure all of you mathematicians, that's bad. But the $60 million we invested into technology companies, we returned $258 million. So that was really good. So we 3X'd that fund, and
that's amazing, by the way.
That was the catalyst.
With an anchor like your biotech,
yeah, that's
an amazing return. So for non-venture people in the room, like, that's amazing.
The journey at this point was, we have to completely remake our firm. So remaking a venture fund is not easy. You have to sit down and look at your partners and say, sorry, you suck. We're going to get rid of you because you haven't returned any money. We're going to remake. Then you have to go tell your investors. By the way, our investors hate turmoil. To them, what we just did was turmoil. We have to convince them to give us money, because the way the venture business works, we raise a pool of capital, we deploy it. Then we have to go raise another pool of capital. If we can't raise that next pool of capital, we're out of business. The guys who gave us money over here in this fund are usually the ones that give us money over here. So we have to convince them we're fine. That's kind of the journey that we kicked off on.
There's a little bit of justice in the universe. If you've ever tried to raise money from a venture fund, they go through the exact same thing. It's a little brutal.
It is brutal. So our fourth fund rolls around, and we convince a group out of Darien, Connecticut, to invest $10 million into us. It's called Portfolio Advisors. And they had such a reputation. That was... as an entrepreneur, that's like getting Sequoia to invest in you.
100%.
Everybody will just pile in because Sequoia's in your deal. So we got those guys to put money into us. They invested $10 million on behalf of the state of Utah, so Utah Retirement System. was a big sigh of relief because we got our next fund raised. We're off to the races.
How big was it?
It was another $120 million.
Okay.
We put $800,000 into this little tiny company called Cloudflare. We were the seed investors in Cloudflare.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Does anyone use Cloudflare in here? Oh, wait, you all have. You don't know it. Everyone in this room has used it and probably uses it every day.
So 50% of your internet surfing, you're going through Cloudflare. So my partner, Carl Ledbetter, who is a great guy, he retired in 2018. He sits on the board of Cloudflare. We invest $800,000. We end up owning 20% of this business, and we're off to the races. This is 2009. So I'm going to fast forward a journey. Happy to talk about that. In 2019, that company goes public. That $800,000 that we invested is now worth $800 million. All total, we are going to return $2 billion to our investors. So my good friend at Portfolio Advisor who put $10 million into our fund, I handed him $100 million. So that was another catalyst that kept us in business.
That's okay, by the way. For you people aren't good at math. That's okay. So okay, now let's go big because we're going to go to questions here in maybe a few more minutes. What are some of your favorite Utah investments that you've been involved in?
Yeah. First of all, there's been a bunch of them that we have not been investors in. Like, I sat at Market Street Grill and told Josh James, because I sat on the board of directors of a company called NetObjects that was going to buy mycomputer.com. Internet bubble bursts, NetObjects market cap plummets. It's a great lesson I learned from a guy named Mike Zisman, who is the founder of Lotus. I'm sitting in the boardroom at NetObjects, and we need to call Josh on the phone and say, dude, we're not buying mycomputer.com. We're going to buy that company for $40 million. Because our market cap went from like $2 billion to about $50 million in the course of about 6 weeks. We had a $1 million breakup fee. By the way, if we had paid Josh that $1 million breakup fee, NetObjects goes out of business. But it was a contractual obligation. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are we going to do? Mike Zisman says, we gave our word to that kid. You call him on the phone and you tell him we're going to ship him his $1 million. So we shipped Josh his $1 million. That became Omniture.
So think about that. That breakup fee is what created what was arguably the pivotal company in the state of Utah that basically made the Utah tech community happen.
So then
with your accident. With
with my accident.
Yeah, with your mistake.
So then Josh calls me. We go to Market Street Grill up off 215, and Josh goes, dude, we figured out this little thing on eBay, this analytics thing, and it's like this little widget. For $3 million, you can own 30% of Omniture.
Just remind me, what did Omniture sell for? Oh, never mind. Maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's still too soon. About just under $2 billion.
Just under $2 billion. So let me do the math. 30% of $2 billion is a lot of money, and it was going to be $3 million for me. I looked at Josh and I said, Josh, I don't have the guts to do it. Like, based on what I just went through with NetObjects, I can't do it. So Josh and I parted friends. So when Omniture went public, I called Josh on the phone and I said, Josh, you can tell me I told you so all day long. Of course he did. Like, we all know Josh. I got harassed. But what was great about that is roll forward, Josh called us on the phone about Domo. And he said, look, I'm not talking to any venture guys, but I really appreciated our lunch at Market Street Grill. Do you want to be an investors in Domo? So even though we missed Omniture, I loved Domo. It was a great outcome for us. The other one is a company called Fusion.io. Do you remember Fusion.io?
Oh, for sure. One of the hottest companies in the world for a period of time.
You know what? I go sit down with, does anybody know Rick White and David Flynn? Those guys are crazy when we love them to death. And I go sit down with those guys and I listen to them talk about what they're doing with that company and what they have invented. And I'm like, this thing is going to be amazing. Oh, yeah. So we plowed a bunch of money into Fusion.io. It was a great outcome for us. But let me talk a little bit about kind of what's happening today. So we've invested, I'd say probably 60% of what we do is in the state of Utah. Companies, dollars, the whole works. I mean, we still invest all over the country, but, some more kind of, it's like saying, name your favorite kid. I got a lot of them that I love dearly, but what's happening in Utah, we got exposure to Lucid. By the way, I remember when those guys came and sat down with me. I'm like, charting software? Seriously? Like, what are we doing here, folks? So we ended up investing in those guys kind of later on. But, there's some companies that are going on right now, like a Nurse, a Strider, a LiveView, a Redo, a few of these businesses that are running around out there, that what is so freaking amazing is when I sit back and look at what this world looked like in the mid-'90s to what it looks like today, I think there was this to make math work for a venture fund, you can't sell a company for $50 million. But to make it work for an entrepreneur, think about that. If you can sell your company for $50 million, that is generational changing money.
It changes
Everything.
everyone. Yeah, everyone around you.
But it doesn't for me. So that's the way we had to think about the world. Today, why Utah has well, there's lots of reasons, but one of them is we have these iconic companies that just continue to come and come and come.
Well, okay, so fast forward. In the next 5 years, what do you think is going to happen in Utah? How does the tech community evolve, and what do you want to do?
Well, I have 4 grandkids, so I want to spend a lot of time with them. By the way, for those of you who are grandparents, best freaking job on the planet. So I'll just throw that out there. But what I think is going to happen in Utah, and this kind of got trumpeted. So we closed our latest fund about a year ago. We raised $500 million. I raised a lot of money out of the Middle East. I was really fortunate back in 2012 that one of my investors actually moved to Abu Dhabi to work for ADIA, the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. They invested in us. Today, I raised a lot of money out of that part of the world. So I'm in the Middle East. I'm in Bahrain, and I walk in to sit down with this large family office in Bahrain. And I sit down, and they slide this article across the table, and it's on Silicon Slopes and the tech community in Utah. I'm like, wow, how cool is that?
That's crazy.
It's crazy. ADIA, in their investment memo, because they shared it with me, one of the reasons they invested in us is because we're in Utah. So I think the evolution of the world, by the way, I had Siemens, the big German company, turn me down because we're based in the state of Utah.
Oh, amazing.
I know it.
That's
they
crazy.
Just like,
didn't see it.
they're German.
Yeah.
By the way,
Exactly.
I'm German as well. Well, Polish, but my grandfather kind of in the middle.
We'll call it German.
There you go. So anyway, what I think is one, I think the Olympics were a catalyst for us in 2002 for the world to start saying, wait a minute, you can build massive opportunities here in the state of Utah. So I think not only the tech community, but then I'm going to broaden that out. I'm going to say, what goes on here with defense tech is pretty amazing. I mean, we just had a company called Vector, which was founded in Washington, D.C. The CEO, all he'll let us tell you is he's a former Special Forces guy. And Vector is this amazing drone company. He comes to Utah. He meets this community here, moves the company to Utah. I think you're going to continue to see that. Now, we got to deal with traffic and housing and water and pollution and all those sorts of things. And we will, because that's just who this community is. But, people talk about Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley is amazing. But they used to put us, Utah, in the same category as Austin and Seattle and Denver. No more. We're rising above that. It's because what goes on here. My venture friends will tell me what happens in Utah is so special. Because guess what? Entrepreneurs help each other. Yeah, you guys compete all day long for talent, for even your software will compete. But they help each other. And that's what I think needs to continue to be special about this community.
That's amazing.
So,
yeah, it's amazing.
What I want to do is I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. Like, I love this. I love this community. I love what I do. My wife says I can't retire till I get a hobby. I haven't figured out what that hobby is going to be.
Kind of is your hobby.
It is my hobby. Like, I think work is my hobby. There you go.
Yeah, very amazing. So let's take a minute. Questions for Blake. Again, what you have access to, again, as a person who, as you can see, has been involved in not just the advent of venture, but really the Utah tech community and the Utah business community.
So it's nice to meet a fellow Idahoan. I'm from Idaho Falls originally.
Oh, great. Which high school did you go to?
Idaho Falls High School.
All right, my wife's a Bonneville B.
Bonneville. No, they're the big school. Idaho Falls is kind of gotten smaller there. It's amazing the west side of Idaho Falls has gotten so big. But I'm also a Novell alum, and so I and just kind of going backwards, I guess, you know, I like that when companies can last and go for a long time. And I've always wondered what companies like Novell could have done to stay on. I realize technology changes and it's hard to keep up, but you know, you were there for a while. What do you think companies need to do to last? Is it adaptation? Is it just hiring the right people to make things happen?
Yeah, so WordPerfect and Novell, I think, suffered from the exact same fate. Complacency, lack of innovation, and arrogance. Like, maybe kind of mix all of those together. You know, there was a time when if Ray Norda and Bill Gates hadn't gotten into a fight, Novell would have acquired Microsoft. But Bill Gates wanted to be in charge.
This is a real thing.
Yeah, and Ray Norda wanted to stay in charge. So he said, look, NetWare, by the way, was amazing. It controlled a vast majority, but they stopped innovating. They stopped being nimble. All of a sudden, by the way, if you remember what NT was, that's the competitor to NetWare, just like Word was a really shitty product compared to WordPerfect, but then they innovated on top of Windows. WordPerfect made a decision, oh no, OS2 is going to be the winner. Anybody remember OS2? Yeah, exactly. So to your question, like, I think that's what, and by the way, it's harder once you become a public company. Like, I sit on the board of Weave, love that business. They're innovating, but it's hard as a public company. So I think as a startup, like, you have to continue to innovate. Those two companies, I think, just got complacent and didn't continue down that path. Why did Sun Microsystems not make it, but others did? Like, you think, you look at Microsoft. Microsoft's still a juggernaut. Oracle is still a juggernaut. Like, those companies are still, but then you still have, you know, you have these, by the way, I think Google is now kind of considered almost a has-been with OpenAI and Anthropic, and all of those companies are coming. So that's what I'd say was, I think, one of the, you know, I'm sure if those founders were sitting here, they'd probably tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, but as just a guy running around trying to sell software, you know, I remember sitting in a sales meeting at WordPerfect and having them stand up in front of us and say, people are never going to buy an integrated suite of products. They're going to only buy best of breed. I'm walking out to the payphone, putting my quarter in, calling my wife on the phone, saying, well, I'm going to polish up my resume. We're screwed. Because I'm getting killed out there selling a single product against Microsoft Office.
That's a really great question. Other questions back here?
Hey, I'm new here, so a little bit out of my league. I don't know a whole lot about tech, but as a stay-at-home mom with a vision for transforming education for our kids, how do I find the right investors who will believe in me and my idea, even though I don't have a traditional startup background?
You know, first of all, I'd start by not getting with investors initially, but look at this room. Get you some great mentors. Because if Dave Elkington calls me on the phone, I'm going to meet with that entrepreneur. If I go to cold inbound on LinkedIn, I'm probably not going to meet there. So
there's just too much. There's too many. You need,
like the volume that comes to us, a good filter for us.
Yeah.
And we try to work really hard to foster and deepen relationships because, you know, people are going to interact with Dave and everybody else. So that's.
And I'll pile on just a little bit. Don't worry about money, investment. Build an amazing business that makes you money. Like, generate income out of it and get friends and mentorship and build a community around what you're doing. And then when you've built something amazing, then investors come to you, and that's what you want. You never want to actually go knock on an investor door.
Yeah, very true. And then ask yourself, what am I building?
Yeah.
What we look for is, I'll call them generational companies. We're okay losing money on a bet that can be $10 billion, that can be Cloudflare. We'll pass on companies where, honestly, the outcome might be $50 or $100 million because the math doesn't work with our funds. So that's the way the other thing is, one, if you don't have to raise venture money, don't do it. Second of all, ask yourself what you are. There's lots of amazing businesses that are $50 million that don't raise a nickel.
And change your family, change everything.
Yeah, change your life, the whole works.
Other questions? Thank you. Up on this side. Got a couple of them here, so we'll get everybody.
So I'm definitely in the wrong room. I'm here by mistake. My employee said that he was going to take me out for a dinner and a show. And this is not our industry. But do you guys only invest in tech companies?
So as Pelion, we only invest into technology companies and software companies.
Okay.
There are firms out there that do biotech, med devices, consumer, green energy. Like, there are firms that have a specialty. The reason we do it is because we know it.
Sure.
Other firms that do, like, there's a firm called Elkington. It's an amazing firm. They do consumer products.
Maybe a little later, if you have 10 seconds to maybe talk to me about our industry, you maybe can send me in the right direction because we're at that stage right now.
Absolutely. Yeah,
right.
let's catch up afterwards.
Thank you.
Hi, Blake. Thanks for being here today. I'm Suzanne. I am intrigued by something, and I want to know the psychology around what you do. So you're sitting with Lucid. You don't see the vision of the chart saying, what does it for you to get on board? When you don't see the vision that these geniuses are seeing, what does it for you?
Yeah, so we kind of look at three things. We invest, I'll call it the seed and Series A. So we are so early in how we invest. And so I start with, how big is the opportunity? And we need to see a clear opportunity that can be multi-billions of dollars in terms of size and shape. Then the other thing we look at is, what is the disruption with the technology? And we usually look at that. I'll give you one little example. So we invest in this company called Riverbed Technologies. Riverbed, when we sat down with the entrepreneur, he said, I am going to speed data up faster than the speed of light. Now, I'm not a physics major, but I think that's like impossible to do. But it got us interested in what they're doing. What they had invented truly sped data up 10x faster than what it was. So we look for that sort of disruption. If it's not 10x, why do we do it?
The math doesn't work.
Math doesn't work.
So you're looking for a big dream, somebody like that, they're swinging for the fences.
Swinging for the fence. We call it dent the world, or generational companies. Then the last thing we really hit on, and I told you the story about Josh. I would definitely put Josh into this category. We look for amazing, sometimes crazy founders. Like people that, because if you think about it, they're pushing all in on one thing. And I will tell you, one of the best things that I have done over my entire career is when we get serious about a company to invest in, I try and go to dinner with the founder and CEO and their plus one, their husband, their wife, their partner, whoever, and I want to hear about that person. I want to understand, because they're going on this journey. You know, what my wife did with me in the early days of Pelion, had she not been all in on the risk that we were going to take? So those are the things that we look at, but it's size, disruption and moat, and then the founder and entrepreneur. And those are the three things. And by the way, you can have an amazing, like Josh. I didn't see the vision. Like, I still was caught in this mycomputer.com thing, and I didn't see the vision of this little analytics thing that he had on top of eBay, which became Omniture. But I knew Josh was special, but we passed on it. So those are the things that we think about.
So I think we're out of time. Look, again, this is a big deal having Blake here, and it's really an honor for Slopes to be involved with what Blake has done. I want to personally thank you for your involvement in the community and mentorship to helping people build what they're building, and again, our friendship. So,
Thank you. And you know what? This guy right here, amazing entrepreneur. So your tip of the spear stuff for this community, such
cool.
an
Thank
important
you.
thing. So
look, it's a community, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you all for coming and listening to me. I love this state. I love this community.